Hello, MTA runners. This is Jennifer Giles. I am an MTA running and triathlon coach. I'm also a sports nutritionist. We're going to talk today about stress fractures. So we all know our fellow runners who have been sidelined from training and have to walk around in a boot all day. And maybe that has been you in the past too. But no matter if it's you or a friend, we all are aware that we are at risk for stress fractures just by being runners because of the impact of running over and over and over again. Stress fractures are actually considered an overuse injury. And you know as well as I do that we tend to overuse our bodies when we're training, especially when we're not training smart and maybe we're doing a little bit too much too soon. And the bottom line with stress fractures is also when we're not eating well enough and balancing our nutrition, it puts us at an even greater risk for stress fractures. So there are nutritional implications for stress fractures, treatment, and prevention, and we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to share my screen with you for a minute so we can start chatting. And here we go. Okay, so basically stress fractures usually occur in the top metatarsal bones of your foot. They're the most common. They can also happen in your tibia, part of your leg as well. But typically we see them in that top part of the foot because we're pounding over and over and over again on that same area. And without the proper recovery and without the proper nutrients underneath to rebuild bone time after time, run after run, then that puts us at risk for these increased stress fractures. So what do we do about it? And let's learn a little bit about why it happens and what we can do about it. First thing we can do about it is to avoid certain foods. There are certain foods that we're consuming that put us at an increased risk for stress fractures, clearly because they leach calcium from the bone. So our first being soda. Interestingly enough, it's the phosphoric acid in soda that's been shown to leak this calcium out of our bones. And it happens whether it's diet soda or regular soda. Regular soda seems to leach a little bit more because it has the sugar component as well as the phosphoric acid. Diet soda doesn't have the sugar, but it's the acid that still leaches the calcium from your bones. So decreasing the amount of soda in your diet. There were studies done about people, and they weren't necessarily done on runners, so we have to take that with a grain of salt, but studies done on people who drank one soda a month versus one soda a day, and their stress fracture rate was 40% higher in the soda drinkers than in the non-soda drinkers. So I think that's a pretty substantial percentage, enough to convince me to limit or eliminate my soda intake completely. Sugar is another component. So sugar is one of those ingredients that we like to eat a lot of. And if we're maintaining our blood sugar, sometimes we feel a little bit freer to do so. But sugar has also been found to leach calcium from the bones in excess. So sugar's not a bad guy all the time. There's sugar in every single food. In fact, most of the foods that we eat turn into some form of sugar during digestion. But we're talking about processed white refined sugar. That's the sugar that is going to leach that calcium from your bone and create a little bit more risk for stress fracture. Sodium is another thing, another ingredient that does the same exact thing. And sodium, and when I say sodium in excess, because we do need sodium to regulate our hydration. It's a very important electrolyte. And a lot of times runners who are eating healthy limit a lot of sodium in their diet and become a little dehydrated. So we need to balance our sodium and have enough of it, but we don't need to have sodium in excess. Right now, the recommendation is 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of sodium a day is considered a low sodium diet. And of course, you have to really balance this with whether you have a risk of hypertension and some other medical issues that could limit it even more or not. So everyone's individual when it comes to that. But an excess intake of sodium can leach calcium from your bone, and that's really the point I'm trying to get at today. The other thing can do the same as coffee. Interestingly enough, we tend to put sugar in our coffee, so it's a little bit of a double whammy. But again, with coffee, it seems to be the greater amount of coffee that you're drinking, the greater risk of calcium leakage from your bones. So moderation. 1 to 2 cups of coffee didn't have a huge difference in the leaching of calcium from your bones. 4 or 5 cups a day did. So again, it's all how in the quantities that you're using. But interestingly enough, coffee, 4 to 5 cups of coffee in this one study that I looked at, if you're going up to 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, you're leaching 40 milligrams of calcium from your bones per cup, where that wasn't seen when the individual just drank 1 or 2 cups of coffee. There was minimal leakage. Sodium was about 10 milligrams of calcium that were leaked from your bones per 2,000 milligrams of sodium consumed. So I know this number is a little bit confusing. Basically, the big picture is the more of these products you're consuming, the greater calcium is being leached from your bones. So to limit them and balance them as much as possible. The good news is there's plenty of foods that we recommend to increase instead of avoid in order to strengthen bone mineralization, bone deposits, and bone repair. And that can offset some of these foods that we need to avoid if you are having some of them. But another food that's in question is protein. So with the insurgence of these high protein diets, there's been some studies about eating or consuming rather too much protein and calcium leakage. And yes, that is true. But maybe the positives offset the negatives of this. So with a high protein diet, they found an increased calcium loss from your bones, and they found that by measuring it in your urine. So basically we're leaking calcium out of our urine because our protein intake is too high. But then really, when we looked at a number of these studies and their conclusions, we found that the positives of consuming protein kind of outweigh that loss, because we build muscular strength when we eat protein, and we actually build and repair muscles, and muscles are connected to bones. And when the stronger your muscles are, the stronger your bones are going to be, because they're connected and they work together. So increasing muscle strength by increasing protein is a good thing, and it's actually offsetting that minimal leakage in your urine that's occurring. And the other thing is it decreases consuming protein with each meal. In fact, if you listen to my webinar about blood sugar regulation, consuming protein with each meal slows down the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream. So we're not getting a lot of sugar release, which, just like my last slide, sugar increases the leakage of calcium from your bones as well. So if we're regulating our blood sugar, that's not going to happen as much. Okay, let's move on to the positive stuff. So these are foods that you should include in your diet and consume regularly so that your bones become strong and stay strong, and they can deal with the impact of daily running and high volume training, or even moderate volume training, because it's really important. So every time we run, there's minor breakages in your bone matrix, and the foods that we eat, due to the foods that we eat, we have nutrients free flowing in your body that go to your bone and rebuild that matrix and rebuild it so that it's stronger. And that's the whole purpose of cell turnover and the whole purpose of eating, to strengthen bones. Okay, first up, calcium. So we know this. Well, we've heard this since we were kids. You have to eat foods that are high in calcium. It's the most important mineral to bone repair, regrowth, development. So dairy products, all dairy products are high in calcium. If you are lactose intolerant, there's plenty of vegetables that are high in calcium too. Collard greens, green leafy vegetables, broccoli, spinach, kale, you've heard them all, but they're super high in calcium, and we should be eating them a couple of times a day. There are other supporting vitamins and minerals that work along with calcium, and you can't really pick one or the other, which is more important. They all work together jointly, but we need to get a little bit of all of them in so that they can work together. Vitamin D is one of them. So vitamin D increases the absorption of calcium into your bone. So it's great to eat all the calcium you want, right? But if it's not getting absorbed into your bone, it's not going to do the work that you want it to do for you. Vitamin D does that. So you have to have vitamin D along with calcium. Vitamin D tends to be fortified in a lot of calcium foods. So sometimes if you're eating dairy foods, you don't have to worry about that. But there are some other sources of vitamin D. And vitamin D is so important for so many other things that it's important to eat these sources anyway. Fish. Any fish that you're going to eat that's high in omega-3 fats is going to have vitamin D. So salmon, mackerel, tuna, all the deep sea water fishes are going to have a good source of vitamin D in them. Cod liver oil or any type of omega-3 supplement is going to have vitamin D in it. Sardines with their bones, because bones is inside the bones is what's going to have the vitamin D and the calcium. Organic eggs are fortified with vitamin D, and mushrooms are a super high source of vitamin D, believe it or not, also. Okay, so magnesium. 60% of the magnesium that's in our body is stored in our bones. and that's where it sits. And it increases the structure of our bones, and it works along with calcium and vitamin D for that balance of calcium, and it transports that calcium in and out of our bones. So it's kind of a transportation nutrient. It also regulates calcitonin, which is a hormone that regulates the balance of bone mass. So when your bone mass starts to decrease, it senses that and it pulls in calcium to offset that balance. So it's a super important one. And phosphorus. So phosphorus is something we don't think about either, but a lot of times it just comes in the foods we're eating if we're eating a healthy diet. So all of these fall under that umbrella also. But phosphorus is in protein-rich foods. Meats, poultry, fish, and if you're a vegetarian and don't eat those, it's also very high in nuts, beans, and dairy products. So as you can see, dairy products has almost all of these nutrients, and if you're eating a well-rounded diet with plenty of vegetables, dairy products, meats, fishes, you can tick all these boxes and know that you're doing a pretty good job in the bone density department. But there's a couple more to talk about too. So potassium. Potassium is really important. Now we think of potassium as a recovery mineral to get in a snack because we're dehydrated and we want to regulate our hydration. And it also helps with muscle cramping and electrolyte regulation. And that's definitely true. But it's also really, really important in preventing the leakage of calcium from your bone. So it may not be something that's going to deposit calcium into your bone, but it's going to prevent the loss. So it's just as important, and it's working just as much as those other nutrients that we just talked about. And obviously it's really high in bananas. We all know that. But look at all the other foods that we can find potassium in that we don't always think about. Like sweet potatoes, super high potassium food. Broccoli, avocados, dried apricots, really high. Pistachios, seeds like pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. Fish, salmon, halibut, tuna, so those fatty fishes. Beans, all your varieties of beans and legumes are high in potassium. And dates, believe it or not. So dried apricots and dates are a great thing to have and throw in, say, a homemade granola. And now you know you're getting added potassium. Silicone. So this is another one nobody ever talks about. Look at how many foods are high in silicone. Onions, bell peppers, apples. I mean, you can make a salad and go nuts with all these ingredients right here. Raisins, almonds, raw cabbage is a good source. Pumpkin. So if you're making pumpkin muffins or pumpkin bread or throwing diced pumpkin into a roasted vegetable dish, great source. Cucumbers, carrots, and oranges. Interestingly enough, silicone is actually it's part of the collagen building cycle, and collagen plays an important role in the structure of bone. And it's an assistant to all the other vitamins and minerals we were talking about, because collagen is going to support that bone, not necessarily be part of the mineralization or repair of the bone, but it's going to support the area around the bone. Super important to support that, just like the muscles are supporting. And vitamin K. So vitamin K actually binds calcium in the bone. So this is another important one. It does many other things in your body as well, but super important for bone. And dark green leafy vegetables, really great source. So if you're having salads every day or serving green leafy vegetables with dinner, sauteed with garlic and olive oil, those are really great, important vegetables to include in your diet every day. Throw them in smoothies if you don't like cooking them. They're excellent things to always have in the house. Scallions, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, asparagus, cabbage, again, and prunes. So a lot of these you'll see repeats, which is great. So you pick one and you can kind of say that you've covered a couple different vitamins and minerals, and that's important. So don't forget that as well. So you don't have to go back to this presentation all the time and say, oh my gosh, did I get all my vegetables? Basically, if you're eating a variety of different vegetables and proteins and fish and nuts and seeds and beans, you're going to be doing really well in the bone health department. But you will have to be aware of getting all of these in consistently, frequently, and every day, especially if you're an everyday runner. Okay. I wanted to end this talk by just saying that, and I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but if you're getting sufficient calories in a very balanced manner, so a lot of different foods, a variety of different vegetables, a variety of different protein sources, beans, nuts, seeds, all the rest of it, then you're going to be depositing bone and helping your bone repair on a daily basis pretty efficiently. And that's the good news. We see a lot of stress fractures in runners from the runners that are restricting calories. And this is really, really common. More so I see it in female runners than male runners. So that's something to be careful of. But you know, it's really common, and everyone's experienced this, is we want to lose 5 pounds because we think it's going to make us faster, or 10 pounds, or 15 pounds, or whatever it is. So we restrict our calories in order to get there. And what we do is we interfere with the bone health process. We interfere with all these minerals, depositing calcium. We interfere with the levels of magnesium and potassium and vitamin K and vitamin D. We're kind of throwing our bodies out of whack when restricting those nutrients, and we aren't able to repair after our runs. So we're running like crazy, we're not eating, we're hoping to lose weight, and we think we're doing a great thing to make our body stronger and faster. And in the end, we end up with a stress fracture. You can end up with other things too. But it's super important to know that restricting calories is not an efficient way to be healthy. It may help you lose weight, sure, but if you're going to be 5 pounds lighter and in a boot and unable to run, well, then losing weight didn't really help you get faster. And so I just wanted to hammer that home because it's that important. I think it's so much more important to, instead of restrict your diet to lose weight, fuel your body properly and try to match your fueling intake with your activity level for that day. So with your run. So if you're doing a long run, you need to prep for that long run properly, and you need to recover from that long run properly so that we don't hurt our bone health and we don't interfere with that process. And then weight loss will happen. If you fuel your body properly, your body's going to find this place where it's balanced, and then it's going to start to burn that excess fat, if you have any, to lose, and increase your metabolism, and that's how you're going to lose weight. So if that's something that has been on your mind, I would definitely talk to someone. Maybe a sports nutritionist in your area is a good person to talk to about, you know, leaning up or cutting off some pounds in a healthy way so that you don't affect your overall health. I hope that kind of makes sense. I see it so often that that it's that important for me to say and to highlight. So I'm going to stop my share here. And just wanted to come back to you all here and say thanks so much for joining me. And super happy you took the time to listen. And I just want you to take a couple extra minutes today or over the next couple of days during your run and think about how well you do with nutrition as it pertains to bone health and preventing stress fractures. All right. Happy running, everybody. Bye-bye.